In a short stretch of time from the mid-90s to the early 2000s, a relatively small group of people started playing around with this thing called the World Wide Web. They had the audacity to think they just might change the world. This project introduces you to the OG players from those hallowed days and lets them tell you what it was like and how you should have been there. Episode 8. Today we're going to have a fantastic conversation with Louis Gersh. He was an investor from back in the day, did a number of partnerships and startups. He was kind of at the center of it all. Going to be a really exciting talk. I'm excited as hell about it. So, Mr. Ritesh, how are you, sir?
Kyle, I'm doing well. How are you? What a week we've had here in America, right?
I know. Is what are they calling it now? The radical normalcy.
I know, right? Watching things, and you sort of go, "Whoa, wait! We're back to normal. Normal decency, morality. No waking up in the morning with a heart attack. So.
I don't know. I don't know if I like it. I don't know.
No.
The quiet. It's quiet. Too quiet.
How are things in Denver? Life is good?
Life's good. It is sunny. It's warmer than normal, but apparently snow's coming. That's what it does here. It's 60 and it snows. Awesome. So I'm really excited today. You know Louis better than I do, but this is really exciting.
Yeah, Louis is awesome. I've known him for years. This is going to be great because, some of the stories he'll probably have that we wouldn't have even been privy to because, he was toiling away, giving money to people to do the kind of stuff that we were doing. So he's at the other end of the spectrum. So it'll be really interesting to hear some of those things, right?
Yeah, when I was talking to him before we started, it hit me, we saw this world from inside one company, inside one lens, he was sort of looking across the landscape. So that's good. Okay. So before we bring him on, let's do our housekeeping. I do have something I have to break to you, which is really sad. But if you want to know who's coming up, go to youshoulda.com. It's got links to the YouTube channel. It's got links to podcasts if you like the audio versions of these. If you're watching and want to leave comments, Ritesh will look at those comments. We can pull those up on screen. Here's the sad item. We talked about wanting to be influencers. We said the number was 100 subscribers on YouTube. We hit 100. Thank you, everyone. Here's the problem. Someone told me the number is actually 150, but they don't tell you that. So
are we supposed to be experts on all this stuff? Why didn't we know?
I went back and I checked it. It says at 100 you can have your own URL, but I was then told by someone who's done this, no, it was 150. So please subscribe. Okay.
Enough, we need more subscribers.
Enough with that. Let's bring Louis on. I'm really excited about this. Mr. Gersh, welcome to You Should Have Been There.
Good day, gentlemen. How are you both?
Good day to you, sir. Welcome. Great to see you. Your face. Haven't seen you in so long, actually. So it's good to see your face, man.
Yeah, been a while. Well, since we're in such a slow news cycle these days, I figured, why not?
yeah. You'll come on and talk about the olden timey days. I kind of feel like we're all so old now. It's like, what memories pop back seem to be kind of random. So
yeah. And the other thing this is doing is also denying the rumors and the legends. You sort of think you remember something one way, and then the person who's actually there says, no, that's not how that happened. And you just go, oh, man.
I've got like 4 or 5 year problems where I knew this was in 96 at this office, and it was actually at 99 at a different office. So yeah.
Yes. Agreed.
Converted memory banks. So we're excited to hear about some of yours. Why don't you introduce yourself a bit, talk a little bit about what you're doing now, and then we'll dive into the Wayback Machine.
Sure. So I'm Louis Gersh. Today I am the founder and chief stamp licker of Pebble Post. We invented programmatic direct mail, which means we connect all the online interest and intent data through brands and campaigns to send relevant one-to-one direct mail into a postal hub within 12 to 24 hours of every day's online activity. Wow. It's automated. It works. It's cool. We can talk more about it. Yeah. From the background, I had founded a JV as my first company with AOL and a division of Omnicom, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners will and subscribers will know, Organic Online back in the day.
Yep.
So we
really?
were living with the agency world, and I have a couple of fun stories from there. And then after I sold the company, I founded one of the earliest seed funds in the country, really started investing out of the leftover office space in 2002, and turned it into a formal fund in 2005.
Yeah.
I think it was like first round capital, and a guy, Luis Villalobos on the West Coast, who was doing an angel group into it.
Yeah.
Not many. And then
I guess that was at a time when everyone had predicted the internet was dead. So you're like, I know, I'll start investing.
Yeah, well, yeah. I used to call a lot of it.
But I think in real time, I would imagine many questioned your wisdom.
Oh yeah, for sure. And at the time, I used to call a lot of the entrepreneurs, they were reverse commuters, because they were all in it when it was easy to raise $1 gazillion at a crazy valuation.
Yep.
And then once the shit hit the fan, they went back to working for their uncle shoe grommet factory on Long Island in Hicksville or something, right?
So let's go back to the original AOL thing. So when did that happen? Because I didn't know about this, and I've known you for such a long time.
Oh, yeah. So, well, I got out of law school, 95 to 96.
Yeah.
And I was originally going to go work at the founding of Universal Music Group. I grew up, as you know, in the music industry.
Yeah.
And it was a bit of a crazy time in the music industry. And with that company getting set up, I wound up literally turning left and heading west down 57th Street, and worked at Central Park Media, which was, I knew the founder. It was the largest purveyor of all things Japanese animation and anime. And as I joke, it's the classic path out of law school. And the founder, who's a great mentor to me, he was a great maverick entrepreneur out of Sony. And he taught me a lot about founding businesses, building and investing in them. And I founded a division that was for online, developing websites and getting involved with a lot of other, different things around, from content to commerce, which we were one of the early ones doing that, selling all the Japanese animation. And we partnered with AOL and had, I believe it was the largest number of SKUs of an e-commerce site, they said, online period at the time, in 95 or 96.
You were selling,
because we put up all the animation cells.
You were selling through AOL?
Yeah, we had a partnership with AOL. We had an anchor tenancy for the Japanese animation. We were it. And we had all the videos, the mangas, the comic books, the posters, the animation cells from original ones. So that took us up. It was like 24,000 SKUs or something on the day we launched.
On dial-up.
Yeah. Yeah, it was quite a learning experience.
Yeah, I bet. I can only imagine all the photoshopping all the pictures of all those products down to small enough that you could squeeze them through the AOL pipe. And
probably the funniest thing, like a story from then that's classic for the web. We had promotional rights with all the videos they published and everything. So we put up clips, right, to advertise the different products we were selling. And but AOL at that time was on the pay-per-use. They hadn't gone flat fee, right? Mm-hmm. And one of our engineers said, hey, there's this new compression technology. We can speed this up and get so much more. And we're like, no, slow it down. We get paid by the minute. Don't you dare.
Oh, right.
We're making money. You're going to stop us making money.
These kids are on 14.4 modems watching a 45-minute clip. And we get paid every second.
Oh my God!
I forgot about that because I certainly remember the modem noise and dialing up and running the business that way. But I forgot that those services were by the minute. Unbelievable.
Yeah. CompuServe was the same way, if I remember correctly, right? You had to pay by the minute.
Prodigy. Yep.
Prodigy, exactly. Yeah. So there you are. You've got this anime thing going. You're selling all this stuff. What happened? How did Organic come?
Yeah, how did you find Organic? They were California based at that point, right?
No, I was in New York, and I was down at an AOL conference, and I met a guy who became lifelong friend and co-founder, a guy named Bob Ellis. He had pitched a project to AOL in finance called World Investor. And he was saying, you know, this, and he and I became fast friends. It turns out my parents had met him in a small world at the French Open the year before they sat together. And we're just sitting at a group lunch and figured that out. Anyway, they had this project, which a personal finance site was really better served being in New York with somebody who was more investment oriented.
Yeah,
sure. I was building all this Japanese animation, and the biggest use case for it was clip art. Bob had co-founded with Chris Kitsey Zoom.com back then. If you remember Zoom, the homepage building site, Zoom with an X. Right. And their biggest request it was the largest collection of free clip art on the web. Their largest request was Japanese animation. So we wound up kind of synergistically doing a deal. I bought out and became the founder essentially, and he was the co-founder of what became Worldy Investor. I parlayed that at AOL into a cash-free anchor tenancy, which back then, if you remember, like Barnes and Noble was paying $20 million.
20 million, so exactly.
Else.
Wow.
And so with that
and wait, can we just let's describe that a bit? So an anchor tenancy in AOL, they had their little screen and there were all these buttons on it. So you basically were one of those buttons. Is that the idea?
No, we were. No. Oh no! This is like captain of the kickoff team, man. It gets better.
This is great. This is great.
Clicked international or personal finance. We were a sub button off one of the main buttons.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. But it's still big because
that was
the premium sub buttons was actually a big thing. It didn't really matter because they controlled that homepage real estate, but the traffic must have been enormous, right?
When they pointed the beam at our store when we launched it with the 24,000 or so SKUs that we had when we started that as one of the largest stores online, it was insane. Like within a minute, and the great thing was we didn't have to worry about hosting or crashing, right?
Oh, right.
It was all within their private network, and the revenue just went insane. Like, I mean, it was like $1,000 a second, like of just people. It was crazy.
Amazing. How did you? So the fulfillment pieces of it, and some of the, hey, it's like somebody pulling up to McDonald's and saying, "I'd like 5,000 burgers now." You go, wait, I wasn't ready for this. How did you get ready for that stuff?
Yeah, that's when usually when everything starts, nothing can go wrong now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's all fun and games till it succeeds, right?
Yeah. The back end of that business was videos, but it was physical goods, not digital goods.
Right.
And some of those were through distributors but they didn't do pick and pack of onesie twosies. So literally we broke in the first week, and we had to go find a deal for somebody to really do. We had no idea how much would come through. And the thing about Japanese animation, anime, they're fanboys. Like when they see something, they gotta have it.
They want it
right
now. Yeah. I've got 21-year-old twin boys who are totally into that stuff. So I know it from the inside.
We did one of the first e-commerce driven chats, I believe. It was like 96 there was a woman, she's probably still going, in the Comic-Con world. She was in Japanese animation called Apollo Smile. And we did an interview with her online and went like this. And when we were doing the prep, somebody figured out from the anime community how to get in and was just chat room telling everybody. And it was literally like thousands of people across the country. And this is 96 on 14.4 modems. And they're just typing, texting questions. And she's sitting in there in all her, Comic-Con garb, doing her thing. It was
amazing. Absolutely incredible.
Like I said, the classic path out of law school.
Amazing. Now, see, this is stuff I didn't know. We deal so much with Gersh 1.0
and were you legal counsel at that earlier business?
I was technically GC, but I was really more managing the CD-ROM division. We did the Hercules and Xena CD-ROM as a screensaver. Woohoo! That was a hot one. And that's kind of, I wanted to expand a lot of the content we were doing, and Mitsui was an investor, and Mitsui had backed AOL when they had their busy signal craze. crisis, if you recall that.
I remember
they were
that.
going broke as a public company.
That's
and
right.
essentially Mitsui did what's called a PIPE, a private investment into a public entity. And they brokered AOL Japan. And that brought in, it was like $40 million of cash plus 40 of operating for AOL Japan. And then they brokered Bertelsmann for AOL Germany. And together it brought in, it was like 180 million or something, 200 million of cash, because AOL was literally going broke. So Mitsui was one of our investors in the company I was working for. So they opened the door like with a royal red carpet for us. Wow. And I pitched a whole bunch of content ideas to basically do a land grab across those channels, all those main buttons. And they were starving for content. This is before they bought Time Warner, right?
Right.
And I had proven I could do not just content, but develop commerce with them. So we had kind of an open door. And it was working with like, you know, Ted and Bob Pittman and Steve Case and like the whole group back then. Rob Shank, who was still a friend, who ran the Personal Finance Channel and others. And we just started coming, like they were green lighting things left and right. When I met that guy, Bob Ellis, and took over World Investor, that set me on the course. And I started a whole new company called Worldy Information Network about financial information, leveraging a free anchor tenancy with AOL, which was worth gold in 1998.
Yeah.
Because at that point, they were it. I mean, you know, they had, what, 300-400 million people on the platform, right?
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Although at that point, I mean, the writing was on the wall that, you know, the web was certainly, you know, invading those proprietary networks. Like that, you could start to feel it bubbling up underneath them. But AOL was fighting hard. Like, what was that like? You know, you sort of went for this land grab within AOL. You got it. You know, talk about the sort of the overall, you know, what was going on at the time, and like, did you feel that bubbling up? And then, you know, how were you sort of, you know, hedging your bet against what if AOL isn't the end all?
Yes, it was a double-edged sword on a few fronts. So one was raising money. Actually, having a cash-free anchor tenancy made a lot of people say, impossible, I don't believe it. Barnes & Noble just paid $10 million. You're full of shit. So that was difficult actually and it was on a handshake until we got the contracts done. And I knew the handshake was good and was backed by the relationship with Mitsui. But until we got that first contract, I had to raise money and get employees going to build this thing, right? And it wasn't like there was a lot of seed money in New York in 1988.
That's right. It was all,
So that was one. Secondly, then we had the JV, and that was part of the reason to defray costs with Organic. So they were going to develop it. And funny story as a segue. We're sharing space with Organic down in Chelsea on 19th Street, and then they got a new loft on 21st Street, just off of 5th. And we're walking in to meet and talk about the floor layout and where we're going to put the respective employees from Organic and Worldy, my company. And we hear this in the background, like, and it's getting really annoying, right? And it's a few of us from Organic and my co-founders, like, what the hell is that freaking noise? And we go look, and it's over by the server room. And they open the server room door, and it's the workmen. And they're using 2 brand new sun boxes as a sawhorse with saws and sanders cutting wood and drywall. And the server room is like a cloud, right? And like the CTO, Matt Bernardini at the time, it was so great. He looked over, he's like, you want to buy any cheap sun boxes?
Oh my God. It's so funny. Like I think in every other show that we've done so far of these shows, there's some story about kicking the Ethernet wire out of the wall that's what made the site go down, or, you know, tripping over the server, or the sawhorse. That's classic.
Oh my God. Matt had designed the room, and it was state of the art for all the big Organic clients, right? And it was racks of, like, you know, the sun boxes on you know, the proper software, everything. All these guys thought it was a good quiet place to saw and sand.
Wow.
So Jonathan Nelson was part of that crew.
Yes, he was a good friend, and he's the one who set up our deal with Mike Golden, who ran New York, who's also still a great friend.
Wow.
And
So that I remember those days because it was, if you remember, Kyle, it was us, Agency, Razorfish, Organic in New York, and then you had IXL in Atlanta, and then the Scient and Viant guys showed up one day. We're like, who the hell are these guys?
They
Right?
just materialized out of nowhere.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it was Organic was another big, and they kept going for a while as well, I think, right? After the crash. Even.
Well, they got huge, took over floors in the Woolworth building.
Yeah.
And then another funny story with them from the agency side, you know, having a startup share space with the media group and work content was a great idea, which usually never works out in practice, right? And one day, Jonathan Nelson, he came by, and he's sitting on my couch at the shared floor, and I might have been only our floor at that time because they took a bigger floor over on 23rd Street. And we're just shooting the shit about the various businesses. And then he's like, yeah, let's walk over. I'm like, yeah, let me see the new floor. And we go walk over, and the receptionist stops us, and it's still being finished out, and it's beautiful, couple floors. And she says, and she knew me because I had been back and forth a lot dealing with their people. And I guess she'd never met Jonathan. And so we're walking in, and she said, excuse me, who are you? And he's like, I'm Jonathan, you know. And she's like, Jonathan who? He's like, Jonathan Nelson. And she's like, that's great. Who are you here to see? And literally, and I'm the client, and I'm like, it's okay, he's with me. And she's like, oh, okay.
just the founder and head of the whole firm that you work for, but
I'm just the client from around the corner, but I'll walk him in. And then when we walked in, swear to God, they were testing the alarms. I remember it, and the alarms went off. And Jonathan's looking like, what the hell? I'm like, no, it's okay. They're just testing. And he goes, testing what? And I was like, oh, that's the client alert system because I'm here. It was fun.
So Organic built the content sites within the AOL platform. Were they also doing web development?
A great question. They were doing all, and this gets back to your prior question. One of the problems we had was getting people to understand and respect at the time the power of inside AOL, because they were seen as the training wheels for the internet. And you know, MS Microsoft was going to be cool when Lara Stein was running it here in New York, except that nothing worked on it. Right? They were trying to, all this stuff, and they really had a struggle. Yeah. Remember, they did it was like $400 million to back content deals all over New York. And they wound up pulling almost all the money, and almost nothing worked, right? And not for lack of effort, but whatever. So the Organic team was mostly web development, and they actually built our website. Everything was great, and we had very specific design stuff, right, in mind. And then it was like, great, so where's the internal AOL? Because that was part of the scope of work and what you're doing. And they're like, what are you talking about?
Oh, no.
Like, no, that's where the bulk of our revenue is going to come from. Like, are you crazy? And the team was literally like, come on, AOL, like, really? And we're like, no. And they used this internal software they made, ask anybody at AOL from back then, called Rain Man.
Rain Man. Oh my God.
And in retrospect, after the movie, it was aptly named, right? It was like an idiot savant drooling, looking at a screen. But it worked. It was great and stable. But it was also limiting because what they were about was productizing for simplicity. So everything worked, right? Which was not the web, where free range web, we'll call it, was about innovation and breaking, the guardrails, to the point of breaking everything. And it took a while. And I think it was Kate Swan. If you knew her, she was running a lot of the New York office, went on a Frog Design and Blue State Digital. I think it was her that finally kind of got the group together and said, guys, do you realize the power of what's inside AOL? This is part of their contract. They're our partner. You go school yourselves fast on Rain Man and what to do. And they had a phenomenal information architect at the time, Robert, and they designed something very quick, and we got it up, and it was amazing. But that was a hard part of going over both areas, from inside AOL in the walled garden to the free range web.
Yeah, I remember there were those wild oscillations where You realized all of the people that were in AOL, you're like, oh, you put something there and it's like bang, instant audience. And the web was very fragmented, right? There wasn't a Facebook, there wasn't a Twitter that had these centralized audiences. It was all distributed. So yeah. It really
used to call it the field of crickets.
Listening to you now, we've come full circle because everybody's sort of, it's now Facebook, right? Facebook, you put put a group up put a sign up on Facebook. You got to have a community on Facebook, and everything will be great, right? So things haven't changed that much. I guess.
It's like a slightly less walled garden, but it's like Facebook's wall is just the sheer mass of people that they've got there. It's like, do you want to leave all those people? And then you're like, well, I guess not. As a business, I guess I'll give them all my data. It's amazing.
So here you are. You've done this organic thing. You've got the AOL stuff going, and then when did you launch, and how long did it go for?
We launched on, I can't remember the date, but it was the fall of '98. And I remember what happened that day was the largest Dow drop. Because you remember long-term capital management was going under, and we were a personal finance site. And there was like a Brazilian currency issue, and there was something in Russia. And all this was hitting that summer, causing our markets to go in turmoil. And the day we hit go, the Dow dropped 512 points.
Wow.
And everybody thought we're screwed because we're for personal investors and they all just lost money. And it's like, no, they need information. That's what we give them.
I was going to ask about that. Like, I would assume as an information site, down is probably, almost better in some ways than up, right? Because now they need answers. Interesting.
Yeah. And the web went up first. And then we got AOL Live because we ran behind when it was kind of the oversight.
Because they didn't know they had to build it.
Yeah, exactly. And then AOL went live, and that started kicking in loads of the revenue. And what happened for us, because you never really knew what was going to happen back then, 98, 99, right? I used to joke it's like $5 million in 2 years to see if you have anything worth a shit, right?
Yeah.
There was no open source, no clouds, no anything. And we realized we were about quality, not quantity, right? Because Worldly Investor was about like a savvy type of brand, right? And so we were selling at like $40 CPMs for display and $150 CPMs, 200 for email. We were oversold, and a lot of our investors were like, raise the price. We're like, we can't. There's a limit to what they'll pay, right? It's about ROI. It's not just about scarcity, right? So what we did was then start scooping up, building business development partnerships with like Sage, which was the mutual fund personal investment site out of Philly, Motley Fool down in Virginia, and others. And we just said, look, guys, you're undersold. Give us parts of your quality. And they don't care about who's savvy or who's not. Right. Give us the savvy audience. Let us pump content to you guys, and we'll do a rev share on those pages. And that just beefed up our volume. So we wound up spinning that off as 1FN, which was our a financial ad network. And I think we're at like 45 million uniques a month early on, which was like
amazing.
I remember MarketWatch was mad at us because they're like, you can't say that. You're a network. We're a destination site. We're like, yeah, Napoleon like kicked ass at Waterloo. Who cares?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and the worst part is CBS goes and buys MarketWatch, right?
Right.
So I want to talk about things that you've done that are super innovative, but from what I understand, we need to talk about Yo-Yos.
Yes. Yes. So classic kind of Bubble 1.0, as I call it, like screw up story. We had a young woman in marketing come in, and we were designing tchotchkes, and she came up with this idea of Yo-Yos, and it says worldyinvestor.com and cash in the market's ups and downs. And she's giving them out at like Ad Week or Ad Tech in the conferences back then at like, filling the world and everybody hawking all their crap. And I'm like,
this is such a 1998 kind of.
I know, right?
Oh, but I'm like, wait a minute.
These things,
like, Yo-Yos, like everybody's going to want one just to give it to their kids, and kids don't invest.
Yeah.
Like, what is this going to do for us on the average playground in a primary school? Like, and then I see their faces go like, uh-oh. And I'm like, what's wrong? She's like, well, I kind of made a mistake on the order. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, well, I ordered a lot. And I'm like, what does that mean? She's like, well, I went to order a box and I didn't realize they sold the boxes by gross. But then I thought we needed a lot of boxes. So I wound up ordering a gross of a gross. And we're like, that is a lot of MF and Yo-Yos.
Whoa. So what did you do? I mean, you must have handed them out everywhere.
Mercedes worth of new Yo-Yos. Right?
Amazing.
Years later, so like everybody learned, don't tell Lewis about the Yo-Yos, right? Because like, don't talk about them. It's a sore spot. Years later, I'm downtown. We're at a concert. I go out to a deli next door and I run into one of our ex-employees years after we sold the company. This guy, Justin, he's a big guy. And somehow the Yo-Yos come up at like 11:30 at night at a bodega, like outside of like the Palladium or whatever somewhere. And he said, yeah, you didn't know this, but we actually had one of like a gross drop shipped, and it was in Seattle at the conference center for the ad tech conference. I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, it's always raining. And I'm like, yeah, it's Seattle, whatever. That's why they call it Seattle. And he's like, well, I have a hand truck, a couple of them, and I'm navigating them with a box and stuff. And we're crossing the street, and the hand truck tips, and I drop a box, and all this happens. The boxes are wet. They all break open. And he's like, and about 10,000 plus Yo-Yos go rolling down into the front walkway of the conference center. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. He goes, yeah, Lewis, and I loved working for you. I love the company. There wasn't an effing chance I'm stopping to pick up all those Yo-Yos in the
I think that sounds like it was the first guerrilla marketing campaign. Right?
There you go, right?
Yeah, but we were joking. It was probably for the slip and fall tort lawyers, because everybody's stepping on them. It's going to be like banana split show,
Awesome. Yeah, I mean,
amazing.
The marketing at those times was crazy. What were some things you did? Whether it was at that company or later, like what were some things you did or were involved in that really was new territory? Like what are things that you remember? Like, wow, that was a big deal.
So one kind of strategic thing that proved out, and I'm still doing it today, and one tactical that was kind of funny. Strategic was the thesis for the JV was what I call transactional media. And the idea was leverage off that content to commerce thing I did at AOL, was on the web for the first time, an individual can evidence what I called user-driven segmentation, right? And you can know that on a one-to-one basis. And if you can discern the meaning out of that signal from their behavioral data, right, then a brand can continue the dialogue on a one-to-one basis back to the consumer through any form of content. It could be an ad, an article, an email, a product, right? Getting them to convert, whatever it is, sign up, purchase. And that idea of transactional media was truly, like I talked to AOL about it in 96, 95, and then started the JV with them in 98. That was a lot of the foundation of tenets for behavioral targeting and retargeting, right? And we built upon that, and that's what we do at Pebble Post a lot too, right? It works. And it's just a different way to think about it. I was like physics, and semiotics is the study of signals and discerning meaning. And that was really the big picture of what it was about, saying if you can discern meaning out of this signal in bits and bytes, right, reduce it down to behavioral, reduce it down to a person, reduce them down to segments, right? Everybody always said the web was the great direct marketing vehicle, right? And it is. It's not really about branding, right? Almost all of e-commerce is built on direct marketing, right? So that was cool from a strategic standpoint, although nobody wanted to slow down and really try and deal with it. Everybody was just trying to break things moving forward. So probably the coolest thing that we did as an innovation that worked was If everybody remembers when HTML banners came out, that was like, woohoo, right? Like, we all had our favorite
We
banners.
remember those well.
We remember
Punch the Monkey and the Orbits ad with the blimp game.
Yeah.
Like, there were some
How
great
much
ones.
functionality can we put in this little thing?
I remember, wasn't there a company downtown, Eyeballs or something like that, that sort of pioneered a lot of that stuff? That was bought by Avenue A, I think.
Specialized,
right?
right?
So. Yeah, Jim Warner when he was running.
Jim Warner, there you go. Yeah.
So wow, that was back. So we had the idea.
That's why we do this.
I mentioned before we were getting these really high CPMs, especially in email, 150 to 200. And we were the largest provider of free investing newsletters on the web, leveraging all the AOL audience to sign up. But then we'd keep them signed up for free range web, where we didn't have to give AOL a cut, right?
Yeah.
So that was like, we had this huge arbitrage model that was beautiful. And then what we did was built these banners. And it was Michael Cantro and the team at Conan Wells back in the day who implemented this for us. And I remember drawing it out for him on a tablecloth in San Francisco. And he literally took the tablecloth. And I was like, look, the way mutual funds are built is every investment style, value investing, growth and income, every sector and industry like biotech, automotive, or every geography like US versus Asia or Europe.
Right.
I'm like, so we designed our newsletter content like that. So we had something for everybody. We averaged like 3.8 newsletters per person, and we had dailies and weeklies, right? And that got us up to, by year 3, we were on track to transmit up to 1 billion emails a year. And back then 1 billion was a lot. Yeah. So we had to fuel that beast. So we did these HTML drop-down banners where it said free investing newsletters. The first was an arrow for a drop down, and then it had every industry, every sector, every investment style, and every geography. You could select one, and then it would close with that one showing. And then the other was an entry field, which was enter email. And people would type in their email and then hit submit, which was the click through. So we'd pay like pennies per click, and we'd only do cost per click. And every click was an actual subscriber on an email list where they self-segmented, and we were getting 100 to 150, 200 per thousand on the content we were sending.
Oh my God.
So it's just like ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching.
You know what blows me away like when you hear something like that is, I miss New York. When you hear something like that, like that idea of that much functionality in a banner, can you hear me?
Yeah, now you're back. Sorry.
I miss New York. The idea of that much functionality in a banner and like really having it be, a place where this kind of transaction takes place. Like, even though it was a good thing for you, like so much of that stuff has been kind of lost, right? Everything's been so systematized, and a lot of the creativity back then, it's like, let's bring some of that stuff back.
Right. I agree. I remember one of the best ads. I was good friends with Larry Kramer, who founded MarketWatch back in the day. Everybody in personal finance, we all knew each other.
Yeah.
And MarketWatch, I remember one of the coolest ads, and Larry was so stoked about it, was a top banner with a big tower, when they called that, down the side, right?
Yeah.
And it was for Friday afternoon by time zone of the country. And I think it was Heineken. And they would say, pour yourself a Heineken end of day. And it would go at the top.
I remember this ad.
And it would run down the tower to fill the beans.
Go down the side. I remember this ad.
Yes.
I remember sitting going, whoa, how did they do that?
Yeah.
It was, there was a lot of kind of flick in the lighter for the natives back then of like doing, nobody ever imagined it could be done.
Right.
But then I felt like there was a lot in the startup world where, you talk about the innovation and then the opposite too. People just couldn't get it. And it was like, you're flicking a lighter for the natives, but it's high noon and they can't see the flame. And they're like, wow, what a cool noisemaker. Click, click, click. You're like, wow, we got to wait till night till they know we're giving them fire, defense, cooked food. Like it's hard to get through.
Yeah.
So, you just alluded to that. So now you've sold the business and you're going off into this venture stuff. What made that shift? What made you decide, you know what? Because it sounds like you were having so much fun and doing some crazy stuff. What sort of shifted you? Was it the bust, and then you sort of said, okay, I'm going to do something different?
That was a lot of it. So we were going to go public in April of 2000. And we were thinking about it and started planning our European roadshow right before the bubble burst. March 20th of 2000 was the official end.
Yeah.
And so after I sold the business, we had leftover office space, and I had our general counsel, guy Robert Griffiths, still practices, works with a lot of startups, and a woman, Tara Eckert, who is our controller, and with the three of us, just out of necessity of like, we don't have jobs, right? Like FactSet bought our public company, New York Stock Exchange bought our data portion, whatever. And so we were sitting there with like 30,000 square feet. We had 2 T1s, right? That was hard to get back then.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. In a building in Manhattan?
Well, we were in the Lowe's mainframe room that we had sublet. So it was like raised floors with the suction cups and all the wiring. There was a closet with 400 car batteries, right? And it was just cheap space, and it was wired, right?
Wow.
Which was a gold mine back then.
Mm-hmm.
So I started hosting startups. I think what became Industry Brains with Eric Matlick and Elke Wong was the first, and they built the first B2B cost per click ad network because Google wasn't good at weeding out a lot of the B2B stuff, right?
That's right.
But wait.
You search.
Are you? So what you're saying is you invented WeWork?
No, well, no. Debbie Larson had
an early version of.
Yeah.
There was oh my God, I just went blank on the company, but Deborah Larson had a version of WeWork way before WeWork, around Union Square.
That's
and
right.
They had reams of people in little cubby spaces, and it was big companies who needed a satellite office like HP or others. And we were talking about setting up a fund where if we saw them growing and needing more employees, you get an inside track to know to invest, right?
Yeah, that's smart. Did you build out spaces, or was it just lots of desks in the same room?
All shared. So it got up to like 8 or 9 companies, and I invested some myself and with my co-investors who were angels, and we'd build them and then we'd help them. We'd do their legal, do their accounting. It wasn't required. A lot of times they wouldn't want it because they were afraid, to have a seat like that kind of as investors. But so it was a quasi incubator. And that just led. And then after a couple of exits, Industry Brains and Tranvia, which was a payments processor, I then turned it into raising a committed fund because a few of the investors, angels and family offices said, would you just manage some money, take a little cut, and let's figure it out. So I used to joke, I forgot about this, that I was the accidental VC. Right.
Yeah, interesting.
And I was really entrepreneur friendly because I'd been a founder and went through the ringer of ups and downs in the bubble burst. So that communicated well with other founders to refer deal flow.
What was it like investing in that time where I feel like in the popular press for some amount of years after the bubble burst, it was like, oh, the internet's dead. It's not happening. I think, those of us were in it didn't feel like that. But what was that sense of, this is not the sexy thing anymore? People are kind of afraid of it. What was it like investing in that kind of environment? Or did you not sense it like that?
No, it was brutal because New York was the Sahara Desert for a while.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
I would say like I used to say, it was 3 classes of graduates or alumni around the web. And there was Bubble 1.0 up through March of 2000. 2000, right? Yeah. And the cool thing was, to me, there's this necessity is the mother of invention. And I had this thesis round I called The Velocity of Obsolescence. And the idea there is in that first bubble, and this plays into your question, if you had a dominant market position, you could do almost nothing and all you had to be was the lesser of all evils. DoubleClick is my great example, right? They were half broken and they sucked, but they sucked less than AdForce and others, right?
That's right. That's right.
And they became the gold standard. And if you don't innovate for 5 years, you could still rest on the laurels of that dominant position for a whole lot of reasons, including the other guys can't get money, right?
Yep.
We used to say that about the hosting companies. There's the bad hosting company and there's the really bad hosting company. So you, Mr. Client, we're going to give you the bad hosting company.
Right.
And we'll give you the software
we'll give you the one on the sun boxes that were sawhorses.
Exactly. So that's the Bubble 1.0.
And then from March 2000 to Lehman, I call Class 2, which was the start of some open source computing, a little bit of APIs really kicking in. Not quite cloud computing yet, but instead of $5 million in 2 years to see if you had anything worth a shit, it probably went to like $2 to $3 million in 2 years to see if you had anything viable. And then post Lehman, right? Then it crashed down. It was like $1 million, $1.5 million, and 6 months to get a trial balloon out. You know.
Yeah. Right. So 2002, I would say, after 9/11, and the craziness after 2002 to 2005 probably was that third one, I think, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And I think we met around that time because I was hanging around with that Chris Kincaid fellow with Design Buggy when we came to your office, if I remember correctly. That's right.
Yes. And there was that other, the fashion one where you could share. You remember a couple or brother, sister? I can't remember.
No, it was, do you know who it was, Kyle? It was Arthur Seria. Something about what you wore or something like that, I think, right?
Yeah, and you could share via text. It would text and put images on a website that you texted.
That's right.
That's right. And that thing was taken off like crazy.
Yeah.
And that's when we met talking about it. And you and I, we wound up, I invested some in Design Buggy, which became Elements Media.
That's right.
But you and I became better friends than, which is classic back then.
What was you it sounds like you successfully sort of got through the phase 2 and then phase 3 from kind of 2000 on. What is the stuff that it sounds like you've had a decently continuous trajectory from those days. Like, what did you carry forward from those early days into what you're doing now? Or
there were definitely some troughs, right? Like in it. And to your point about, I remember when people were talking about Web 2.0 and how cool it was going to be.
Gosh.
And I remember I had slowed down in a trough and remembered thinking, what the F are people even talking about? What does that even mean?
Yeah.
And the truth is, it really didn't mean a whole lot of anything, right? It was just,
we can invest in it again because it's not what Web 1.
It was like packaging up what didn't work before to say, okay, right? Classic. And so what happened in my portfolio, I wound up building one of the largest portfolios of like retargeters and behavioral targeters, right?
Interesting.
And I was trying to tie it to commerce, right? Because I wanted attribution and proving back the semiotics, discerning meaning out of signals.
Right.
And so I led like Fetchback, Chango, Tapad, Sail Through, Movable Link, Mass Relevance, iSocket, was in Retail Next, 33 Across 10.
Wow.
Like it was, I used to be on stage and rattle those off, and people would say, "What cool companies!" And when I found Pebble Post, I did, because it's the whiteboard list in my old fund office in chronological order, and I'd rattle them off. And I did on stage, and all these marketers were like, and I'm like, holy shit. Like, people used to say, what cool companies. Now you're like, you're the effing guy. You're the reason I get all these damn ads, Jason.
Can you make it stop? No.
Right. And it's, from what I saw with across the portfolio, I realized how much, number one, digital is being abused and overdone. But number two, I tried to go into physical retail because it hit me that e-commerce at the time was 5% of consumer spend, right? Mm-hmm. Before COVID, it was only about 10%. And maybe today it's about 12 or 14. Like, we think it's everything. It is not, right? Not by a long shot. Yeah. So getting into physical is still the vast majority. So I was in Nearby Systems, Think Near, Retail Next, a whole bunch trying to bridge. But then I realized we're missing the most important bus stop. You can't go from online in a store. And the reason is 90% of decisions are actually activated and made at home. And that is a fact that we researched with Devorah Rogers, who did the famous ZMOT study for Google, right? Mm. So in truth, up to and about 90% of meaningful and higher purchase decisions are made at home, right? You don't do that with a display out on a mobile device.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
Nobody ever taped a banner ad to their fridge and said, honey, is that the right one?
Right.
And if you're not activating at home, you're not going to change. You're not going to drive somebody with a display out into store. It's just like notoriously bad for it, right? It's all click for e-commerce. It's direct marketing for e-commerce.
Nothing's changed that much. I remember that conversation. I think you gave me a call out of the blue one day. So I've got an idea. Can we have dinner? Oh no, it was lunch. We had lunch at the curry house, right?
Yes.
Where you took a napkin out and you drew out this thing, and I'm looking at it going, Lewis has gone mad. I'm sure Lewis has gone mad. But we'll humor him.
I remember that, like wanting to go tell some people who I knew were like innovative, forward thinkers, like, am I crazy?
Yeah.
But the way to get to home, and I came up with the phrase, we had the trademark on it. It's our product is programmatic direct mail. So we take all that real-time interest and intent data. We have an address graph that now hits 100% of US households to a physical address, not IP, actual postal. Mm-hmm. And then we can manage the campaigns for the brands to send next day direct mail into a postal hub. And now you've got relevant mail, not junk mail, that somebody, I call it, we survive the sort, and we go in what I call the short stack. And if you're in the short stack, you're in the game, right? Honey, what do you think of this playground set? What do you think of this coat for work? What do she can put it in her purse, take it to work, stop at the store on the way home. And it's 100% fraud free because bots don't have mailboxes.
Right.
So it's like all this goodness came into it where I remember calling you because I was like, this seems so obvious.
I know.
I missed this. We could have done this in 99.
Yeah.
Right? Oh my God. Right?
Yeah.
Direct mail, the largest ad spend next to TV and always has been. The highest response rate of any media you can buy, and pretty much has
that was the stunning thing for me, because as you were describing it in my head, I'm sitting there because I used to be, before the internet, I used to be in the catalog business. I did Tweed's catalog, if you remember that, back in the day in the 80s. And so to me, when you were sort of scribbling this out on the napkin, I'm thinking, wait, that's exactly what we used to do with catalogs. And people used to buy stuff from the catalog because it arrived. And there was some, like the Victoria's Secret one, that was people were waiting for it to arrive, right?
Right.
Right? Is it there yet? No, not here yet.
It's a joke.
The Sports Illustrated, swimsuit edition when it arrived, right? So all of a sudden, people weren't getting mail, and there's Lewis going, here's what I'm going to do. Once you put it in the shopping cart and you abandon, I'm going to send you a postcard.
Yeah.
And you get it 24 hours later, literally within 24 hours, right?
That's that thing of connecting those two worlds, right? Like that's the thing of, you've got this digital world, and it's like, it's this sort of self-serving giant thing. There's actually another world out there that people walk around in, and connecting those. I've always found that really fascinating. I would love to. So yesterday you and I touched base really quickly, and you talked about those three phases you talked about, and then you said you feel like post-pandemic is going to be a new phase. Like, can you do a little sort of futurism for us here? Like, what are your thoughts about what do you think survives out of this from a behavior perspective, and what is phase 4.0 of this, if indeed this is a turning point?
Yeah, well, I think clearly Google and Facebook as the duopoly, to us, they're dead men walking for programmatic direct mail. No, I'm kidding. I think as like we talk, APIs, cloud, open source, all that changed into really the third phase post Lehman, right? Mm-hmm. I think we're now we're transitioning to what'll probably be a fourth phase, which is post-pandemic, right? And necessity is the mother of invention, right? That's what caused the massive uptick around low-cost trial balloons to show product market fit. Right? That changed the world of innovation, right? And I feel like this is going to cause it again, because the whole idea of remote workforce and doing video was so clunky and bad, right? It was like Microsoft back in 1998 online, right? When nothing worked because they were trying to be innovative. Yeah. Up until a year ago, that was still pretty much the case. Like, video conferencing was way unreliable. So everybody still had to be in the same space, which meant a lot more travel and all that too for business. That's one thing I think. A lot of people say, oh, it'll change and they'll never go back to an office. Great. But what does that mean? Like, unless you're in commercial real estate, who gives a fuck, right? Like, what it may mean is that the cost for innovation and the speed for innovation and the available higher talent for lower cost may be completely like level set, right? On truly a global basis, which has never really been true for the early stage. Now you can build a team, do a startup. Costs came down even more, right? Because you don't have to have an office. You don't have to hire the best people who live in commuting space of that area of Brooklyn, right?
Yeah.
But no, like, oops,
What the phrase that just
F-bomb.
that's fine. The phrase that just popped into my head was like, fractional everyone, like fractional expertise, right? Like they can literally be anywhere. You can find the most qualified person and they can join you pretty instantly. That's fascinating. I'm excited about the post-pandemic thing because I think a lot of people are talking, it drove digital adoption, but it, in a lot of ways, it just, shifted behavior. And I think gave us, in a lot of ways, permission to just say, well, what if we didn't do it that way? Like all the rules just got broken and changed because of the pandemic. So I think we're kind of free again to go, well, what if, Right.
But I think that's the most important thing. Look, I've been in a board meeting where the toddler is sitting on the chairman of the board's lap while we're doing the meeting, and now it's perfectly acceptable on Zoom, right? Where before it never would have been. So if you look at healthcare in the world that I'm living in at the moment, people are saying, oh, no, we're going to go back to seeing the doctor again. And I'm talking to doctors saying, hell no, this works. If you don't have to come into my office and I can prescribe something for you over this telemedicine thing and
still get paid,
you go and I get reimbursed, I'm in, right? So,
I feel like there's going to be a lot of light bulb moments that come out of this.
Yeah.
And we still got, a dark period to go for sure. But, some ideas, I remember saying to an entrepreneur, he spent 45 minutes telling me his line by line resume. When I said, what was your light bulb moment? And 45 minutes later with his team groaning, he spits it out. He went back to his high school, journalism work on the newsletter. I said, dude, that's not a light bulb moment. That's a dimmer switch. And some of it will be a dimmer switch.
Yeah.
Right? And some of it will be true, light bulb, right?
Yeah.
Like lightning strike, which was kind of like when we had Pebble Post. It was, I'd been working on it. In one way, it was a dimmer switch. I'd been working on transactional media since the mid-90s and studied semiotics in university. And it took all that time for me to realize, 6 years ago now, that I could have done what I could have done it 15 years before I thought.
Yeah.
But it just didn't. Everything didn't sit.
Well, also all the planners hadn't lined up, right? The infrastructures, the shopping carts, all the things that you needed to do the Pebble Post thing hadn't sort of matured in a way, and the need wasn't there, and now there is a need, right? So I was reading an article last week where there was a chap talking about how we're going to see in 2023 the similar event that occurred in the roaring 1920s, that renaissance of stuff coming through. You look at 1920s, just after World War I, and all of that innovation, infrastructure, cars, the record player, all of that came out of that era. And he's saying he feels the same way you do, Lewis, that this 4.0 is going to be like that in a couple of years.
Yeah, fascinating. Listen, I would love to continue this on, but I understand apparently that Ritesh has a day job.
I have a day job.
But Lewis, thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome.
This is amazing,
fascinating. So
super fun. I enjoyed
your time and generosity. I really apprieate it.
And the heathens, I said that Uncle Ratesh said hello as Radish. No, Lewis's dad called me I have no idea why, but called me Radish.
You could not remember Ritesh. And he was always, how's Radish?
Yeah. Radish is good. Radish is good.
Tell them Radish says hello. We'll have to catch up when you're in West Orange, Lewis.
Sounds good.
All right.
Great to see you guys. Take care. Bye.
Thanks.